let's stop stuffing around and let us welcome to the show. It's only bloody Tamatha Paul. Kia ora,
Hey.
Tamatha.
Kia ora,
How are
how's
you?
it going?
Yeah, good, mate. How are you doing? What's going on in your world? What's that greenery? This is the greens have to have some kind of native plants in the shots. That's part of the rules.
Not a native, sadly.
It is a fruit salad plant.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a monstera. This
People
alone is probably
love
worth like
them.
$200. This one leaf.
Hey, we have had a lot of fun in the last 24 hours, thanks to, well, not really thanks to you, but on some level because of you. The world's best advertising campaign, paid for by the Sensible Sentencing Trust, has been just something to behold. And I saw a little Instagram from you today. It does look like you're sitting on the naughty step a little bit, just the naughty seat in the corner, but I know you're not. And you had a bit of a message to people who are putting up those sorts of advertisements.
I don't actually care what you think because the people are with me, and so you can't get rid of me, and you won't.
Yeah. And was it the sound of the police in the background? Was it playing in the background of that one?
Yeah, that's a clip from Marae. So I was on Marae on Sunday on TV1, and I just thought that was a good way to summarize it, really.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Well, it's been fun. I mean, like, what we really want to talk about as well is the old defund the police slogan, what it means, because what the opposition to your messaging is obviously saying straight away, it means that we're going to cancel all of the police and there'll be no police left. That's what they say. But just before we go there, I kind of want to ask you about the campaign. Like, Sensible Sentencing Trust put this up. Has this been a net positive for you guys? What do you personally think about being the poster girl for the Sensible Sentencing Trust on some level?
Well, I think the Sensible Sentencing Trust are a bunch of idiots, if we're going to be straight up. They don't know how to read. They don't understand why judges don't give long sentences anymore. I doubt any of them have stepped foot in a prison before. Don't think they're living in reality land and understanding that rehabilitation doesn't happen in prison. So putting people in there for longer is going to make people more hostile and more aggressive when they inevitably come back out into the community. But I've heard them come and talk to us about 3 strikes and the Sentencing Reform Act, and there's no brain cells behind what they're doing anyway. So I wasn't surprised to see this billboard, but I think it just also shows that they have no understanding of Wellington City either. Like, if they think putting this up in Wellington City is going to be some kind of a hit job, we'll see how that goes next year. I remember when I was running for local body, I had a whole bunch of anonymous flyers that were delivered to every house in the ward from kind of heritage crazies who were just like really against us densifying Wellington City, and that also backfired because that ended up with me getting enough votes to elect 2.5 people. So I don't think they understand how these kinds of things backfire. But for me, I was like, free promo shot.
This mate, 2 questions actually. Do you remember who came in and submitted in this? Because like, it used to be Garth McVicker back about 1 million years ago, and we've read a press release yesterday from about 12 months ago where they're like, we're trying to reboot Sensible Sentencing Trust. Do you know who's behind it now? Like, do you remember the person that came and submitted?
It was some like middle-aged man. He was very emotional and deranged. Their whole basis behind their arguments have always been taking the worst possible, most horrific nightmare cases and claiming that that's what we should base our justice system on, which is absolutely laughable. I don't think any credible judge, lawyer would ever back any of their statements because they're just fearmongers, and they just, I wouldn't be surprised if they're getting money from their prison industrial complex mates who profit from brown poor people being funneled into our justice system. So yeah, there's just a bunch of idiots.
The question you kind of posed there at the end is one we asked last night. This is a group that used to function, I think, with a fair amount of funding back in the early 2000s under Garth McVicker. Then they disappeared.
Everywhere.
Yeah, then they disappeared after they tried to support Bruce Emery, who was a guy who murdered a teenage boy for spray painting his fence. That's when they kind of disappeared. They started to come back again about 12 months ago, it would appear. And now they've got enough money to do these kinds of billboards. They're not going to be cheap. This is an organization that's basically has got no following, has got no presence, and they're paying for these things. I also, like you, wonder where is their money coming from. It would be interesting to find out.
Well, I never in any of my campaigns had the money to get those big billboards on those big buildings. So, you got to get it somehow. And also, I'll be giving them more things to put on billboards so they can go hard. But it's so crazy, right? Because I've never said the words defund the police.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that shortly. The last thing though is we're going to obviously I've already talked about this. We're going to try and see if we can figure out how to get that on some merch, because that'll be good for you guys, and maybe include a charity or something and do something with it anyway, because how much more beautiful is it? The definition of being hoisted by your own petard, if your attack advertising turns into something that supports and helps the people you're trying to attack, I think it would be fantastic. Anyway, defunding the police. So you've never ever said defunding the police privately or publicly? It's not a phrase you've used?
I've used other phrases around the police, but can't recall saying defund the police. And it's just ironic coming from this group too, because that is exactly what this government is doing. So
yeah, 100%.
It's like a complete deflection from what's actually going on here. And every day for the last 2 weeks, this government has been using their questions and question times to ask questions about the police. Actually, I got sent a few videos of the Prime Minister walking around Wellington Central with a beat patrol, just looked like an absolute pariah. Nobody wanted to talk to them. It's just like wrong city, mate. Like wrong city. But yeah, it's just been a little bit embarrassing. But I guess looking at the news stories that have come out in the last 20 minutes, I can understand why they're trying to deflect from their own chaos going on within the government.
I don't mean to be the one in the dark here. What's come out in the last 20 minutes? I've been preparing a show.
Oh, just different allegations around government MPs and what they get up to in their free time.
Are you talking about? I saw something on the news about a religious cult. Are you talking about that one, or is there others?
Yeah, the national MP for Ilam is part of some really sussy, culty sounding Christian offshoot. Is that the story that you're talking about?
Not really even surprising though. I mean, there's some very extremely questionable MPs within the government, but do they get the same level of scrutiny? Absolutely not.
Yeah, not that we're going to talk about this tonight, because I think you guys are still figuring it all out. But there are other episodes of the last week or so where the public have been able to decide what they think on not having all the information. So if there is that kind of stuff going on, Tamatha, with other MPs, maybe we should figure out how to release some of that and let the public go crazy on it and see what happens with it. Just saying. So let's look at this. So the way I understand defunding the police, the term is used in America. I don't think it's a particularly good phrase to use, only because it creates confusion amongst people. But what my understanding of it is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tamatha, about the American example, is they're talking about taking some of the money that normally gets allocated to police and allocating it to different bodies, different groups, different entities that might be better to deal with a situation that the police are currently being called to. For example, if someone is having a mental health issue, maybe rather than sending a man there with a gun, it might be better to send someone who is a crisis, someone who knows about crisis mental health issues. That's how I understand defund the police in the American sense. Have I got that right? Is that as you understand it?
I don't know about the American context specifically, but that's certainly where my comments came from, in that I don't think that the police are the best people to deal with a lot of the situations that they're dealing with, because they don't have the right training or expertise to de-escalate situations. That's not to say that they can't and they don't, but there have been lots of muck-ups, high-profile muck-ups that we've seen in the media, but also it was a major reflection within the Understanding Police Delivery report that came out late last year, which talked about the fact that police are not equipped to dealing with responding to people in states of mental health distress. And when you're living in a country where poverty is skyrocketing and where, you know, the use of methamphetamine has doubled in the last year, you're going to need people who actually can respond appropriately to those who are in those severe states of distress, and that's not the police. And maybe we should think about resourcing people who can be better responders in those situations. And there are other examples where I think police are not the best equipped to respond to those situations. I'm thinking of people who take sexual violence and stalking allegations to the police and have had negative experiences because they're not believed and they're laughed at. But there are a range of different areas which I think the police are out of their depth. But that's the kind of country that we live in, where it's far easier to throw money at the police and to throw money at building more prisons and hiring more corrections officers than it is to actually invest in preventative areas that do make our community safer, such as health, such as education. You know, all of these areas that are chronically underfunded and crumbling even further under this government.
Just a little side note as well. I can't remember who it was, but there was an expert on the news last week talking about the increase in meth. And he said, I am going to paraphrase, but he says, we've never seen a spike like this anywhere in the world. So that says under this government, meth usage has had its biggest spike in the history of the world like nowhere else, which is an interesting exercise to get into it as well as to why and what's going on.
Yeah, well, that's not surprising to me because we know that drug use skyrockets where there is misery and poverty and where people don't feel that they have any hope or prospect in their life. And so they, of course, will turn to things that helps them to blunt that reality for them. And I'm thinking about, you look at the way that homelessness has increased by 50% in Auckland, massively within Wellington, and I believe there's some data about Christchurch or Dunedin, and I think it was Dunedin, and the way that homelessness is growing massively. Of course, that coincides with an increase of drug use, because would you not also want to blunt your reality when you're sleeping on a cold street under the rain and wind, being kicked and spat at and looked at in that way, and that's your every single day? I'd want to escape that as well. So they coincide. And you look at things like the gang patch ban and the increase in people in prison, and I don't think people understand that when you're putting lots of people in the same place, that is increasing their numbers of connections, that is helping them to be better criminals and to operate more efficiently in terms of their distribution of drugs. So you it's the perfect storm in creating a crisis. And the scary thing is that we haven't even seen more serious drugs hit our shores to the extent they are present in countries like America. So I'm thinking about fentanyl and other drugs that we haven't even really, that hasn't even hit us yet, but it will, because again, people are able to capitalize off of the misery of others, and having so much poverty makes things far worse.
Chewie, jump in, sir.
First of all, I'm going to acknowledge the fact that people can hear your cat purring, and
No.
it is
Dog snoring. Dog
snoring.
snoring.
I did a dog snoring. Even better. There we go. There was a rapid debate going on in the chat.
This is who we are.
We're imagining in it. Or not.
Have you got Elva?
Right.
Is Elva anywhere? Chewie, is yours around as well?
No. Elva's snubbing me as she always does.
I saw those, and I knew, because Tamatha asked me before, can they hear the dog snoring? And I'm like, no, I can't hear anything. And then in the chat, well, can you hear a cat purring?
Amazing. Sounded amazing. Look, I want to talk about, like, if your life is going so bad that you're sleeping on the streets and that sort of thing, and maybe you have had several bad run-ins with the police. When the police turn up again and you have nothing to lose, what's your reaction going to be? So maybe having someone there that is not the police, the police are standing back and but they send somebody else in to actually have a chat and try and de-escalate things. That just sounds sensible to me. But the people that are zeroing in on this, and I think co-opting that language of defund the police, because that absolutely, as Pat says, massively backfired in the States. And we want to take those cultural elements from what happens over in the States, because we're always watching what's happening over there, and we want to bring it over there, jam some words in your mouth and go, ha ha, checkmate. We don't need to talk about the very sensible parts of what you were discussing, which was literally like, this doesn't seem to be working. What other things could we try? Which, coming out of any other corner of the debate, would be like, yeah, that sounds sensible. Let's look at other options.
Yeah.
It's just remarkable that you have been the focus point of so what is it like to be the focus point of something that seemed like a pretty intense week of media coverage and public commentary and all of that sort of thing? Did you feel like it was in your control to sort of get your message out there, or was it just like, how the hell do I respond to this?
Well, I think the thing that was difficult for me is that I can think of 3 people who have made similar sentiments around policing and prisons in the last year. Andrew Costa, the police commissioner, on his way out. Peter Boshier, the ombudsman, on his way out, and during his tenure as the ombudsman. And Sir Ron Young, who just made those comments on Q&A around sentencing. And I'm not saying that they said exactly what I've said, but they've basically said the same things over the last year. Was there scrutiny on what they had said? Absolutely not. And yeah, I guess, what does it feel like being at the center of that? Well, one big thing that people have been saying to me is, that especially some of your more old school activists, is that they've been saying these things for a long time, particularly around the police. And this is not a new concept by any means. And so the focus on it, I mean, I guess it kind of is what it is. I don't think it's been so much of a bad thing, though. Like, I think it's been worthwhile because it has started a massive nationwide conversation about the police. And to me, that's a win. I feel like there's 2 different types of media attention you can get in a kind of negative light. And one is on politics and the other is on personal things. And so for me, the political focus has been all good, because it's like, I just turn my phone off when I get home, all good. And then that's that. And I can wake up the next morning and keep going. But yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that was really hard in the first week of all the coverage was when the media, and particularly the Herald, were trying to imply that I was lying about the original complaints about the beat patrols packing up homeless people stuff and putting it in the bin, and having the Salvation Army come out and say, well, we never made those comments in an official capacity. And it's like, okay, so when I meet with your frontline workers, would you like me to ignore everything they say then, because it's not within an official capacity, because you didn't put it in a letter and send it to me, And I remember calling the worker that told me about those concerns in the first place, and he said, no, that is what I talked to you about. And the other thing that you should know is that the relationship between the Beat Patrol and homeless people is so hostile that they won't even say hello to people who are rough sleeping, and that represents the relationship that they have. And so that was frustrating, because that angle from the media is an attack on character. And I think that one is quite hard, because it's like, why would I say something that's so unpopular with most people for fun? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I wouldn't say, I would just keep my mouth shut if it wasn't what I was seeing and hearing about, so.
But I mean, what you said is unchallengeably true. Like,
Yeah.
even if there's no research, and I'll just, like we did last week, which there is, this is the police report. Even if there was no research, the statement, and you said some, because we played it several times, some people feel less safe with more police being around. That's actually unchallengeable, because it's going to be true. For people who went with us last week, this is a report on the report, and it talks about, this is from the police, processes, cumulative experiences are still getting in the way of fair, equitable policing, according to their new report. Independent panel has been researching police engagement with Māori, Pacifica, disabled people, rainbow communities. I won't read it out again, but the point that you kind of brought out was, quote, the communities most at risk did not feel they were well served by police, instead seeing them as a threat to their safety. Childhood police interactions in particular were seen to compound the ongoing distrust. So there is actual police research, as you said, which says that. And I'm also wondering, how did you feel? Because we had Kieran McElnulty on our Sunday night show a couple of weeks ago, and Samar from Aotearoa Liberation League had a crack, man. And we were also all kind of going, but we're traveling in this direction together. We might be in different boats, but we're all going in the same direction. It kind of feels like that, Chippy shat all over a teammate here. How did it feel from your side from where we were sitting? It looked like he was kind of shitting on you a bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I first read it, I just obviously, saw his comments. That was frustrating because it's like, okay, white man who's literally sued the police for infringing on his human rights and got paid out for it. That's not an experience that anybody I know has ever had, but good on you, mate. I'm glad that restored your faith in the justice system. But now I've seen that he's been criticized quite heavily. I get a lot of the correspondence that people have been sending to him, complaining, and just all the comments, like his social media. It's just like, oh, mate, don't do that.
The BHN whānau, not happy. We
heard that Chippy kind of reached across the aisle a bit. Did that happen to the Greens? Did he reach across and kind of go, oh, okay, sorry about that? Did you hear any of that?
Oh, he didn't say that to me, but I sort of thought about it that week, and I thought, I just don't feel like people who are hating this government want to see us scrapping with each other, and so I just let a lot of it slide, because I'm like, that's just like, when I first read it, I thought, well, if it's a Labour-led government, they definitely won't let me be the Minister of Police, but I just didn't want to like feed into it, because I knew that that's not what people want to see. People want to see us like working together and stuff. So, I mean,
doesn't it suck a little bit? And I'm not saying you guys back down, but having to be the grown-ups in the room all the time. You know what I mean? Like the Greens tax policy before the last election was the best tax policy out of any of the parties. And it seems that, what's the co-popper here? You want to move together and move forward together and be united and doesn't it get a bit frustrating sometimes to sort of have to be the ones that go, we'll just let this go this time for the betterment of the whole community?
Kind of, but I think the thing with Law and Order and Labour is that my expectations were already low. Like when I became an MP, we were just wrapping up the Ram Raid bill, which they created before the 2023 election as a last-ditch attempt to win middle New Zealand votes by punishing our kids and making it legal to charge 12, 13 and 14-year-olds and collect bodily samples from them and all sorts of messed up kind of stuff. And so it's not like my expectations of Labour's criminal justice policies was high in the first place. So I wasn't even surprised when I read Chippy's comments, and I thought that is an area that we need to pull them closer to the evidence, bring them towards the evidence and actually get them to listen.
One of the things that I said in the wake of that is that in the search for comment, Hipkins ended up basically being in lockstep with what Luxon was saying and being very much aimed at not just what you said, but what they thought of you. And I was like, this is a trap that Hipkins needs to avoid. That, sure, he might not go as far left or as far radical as you are, but he should never, ever, ever end up in the same place that Luxon is. He should, if he wants to take a contrary position, he should be halfway between you and Luxon at all times. Not racing to occupy the same comments that Luxon's making.
I think there's definitely ways of disagreeing with people's points without just being a dick, like saying
the word choice was not it was not the vibe.
Hey, I've got one more question for you, and it's so funny that you've already used this saying it'll never, because I've written on a piece of paper, you as police minister. I mean, you're the spokesperson for justice. That's your portfolio here. In the next government, if it was a Labor-led government, and that would be the scenario for the Greens to get back in as well. I mean, it's unlikely that Labor is going to outnumber the Greens at the next election, maybe in the future, but the chances are it'll be a Labor-led government. And let's just say hypothetically you did get that portfolio, like you guys negotiated it post. How would you operate differently from Mark Mitchell?
Well, I would be far more intelligent than Mark Mitchell. I mean, I was going to say the bro. The guy doesn't even know what systemic bias is. You know, that's the level of, and he never has anything intelligent to say. Like all these questions that have been wasted in the House, and he just says the same thing over and over again. The police do a world-class job. Like that's all he says every time. He's got nothing constructive to add to any debate, no facts, no data, no nothing. And so how would I do things differently? Well, I'd be going in there and we would be changing a lot. Like there would be some hard scrutiny at the way that the police carry out their work. And also I would relinquish a lot of power and discretion that the police have. There's too much. They've got too much power and discretion to do their jobs, and I think it's that space that lies within that discretion is where you're getting all of the bad outcomes, because you're leaving it to like regular people to make judgments about other human beings that I don't think they're capable of making. And that is why you see an overrepresentation of some people with the police and others not. Like, for example, in the Understanding Police Delivery report, it also said that Māori were 11% more likely to be charged with the same offences as non-Māori. To be charged with the same offence as non-Māori. So that needs to be sorted out. You know, that needs to be sorted out. And again, it would be a relinquishing of some functions that I don't think the police are capable of dealing with and shouldn't be the ones to be dealing with that. And I feel like they wouldn't mind. Like, don't you agree that you know, wouldn't the police agree that they are overworked and under-resourced as well, and that maybe they would have far better jobs if they weren't focusing on things that they are not trained to do?
Yeah, like, that's all very, very scary. I think, Tamatha, the people are going to freak out and go, oh no, not sense, not research, not logic, please, anything but. So hey man, it's been awesome talking to you, always is. We've got Craig waiting in our waiting room now, so we're going to shoot. Is there anything else you want to leave us with, just as we're leading up to the next few days, or anything we need to know about?
I'm going to be doing a speech in the House tomorrow, hopefully, about all of this stuff that's been going on. But interesting, got some fresh data today. I don't know if you saw, but the thing that kicked off all of this scrutiny was a comment that I made about the prison population, and that a majority of people in prison were there for non-violent offences. And Mark Mitchell made all these TikToks and stuff like that with this corrections graph, which is a snapshot of who's in corrections on any given day and what offences they're in there for. And he used that as his kind of argument about why I was wrong. I got some data back today that showed that of all the people that moved through prison in 2023, and 68% of those people were there for non-violent offences. And in 2024, 65% were there for non-violent offences. So, you know, it's like you can have all the stats and all the data, but they still will insist that you're crazy. So,
well, we don't think you're crazy. You're crazy cool, Tamatha, but not crazy. Hey, dude, thanks for being with us tonight. We'll shoot now and stay in touch, and we'll be in touch about that merch. See if we can raise some funds for some stuff with that thankfully beautiful Sensible Sentencing Trust billboard that they made.
Although I did just see Bloody Samoan Michael did a really great animation as well tonight.
He always gets in quick, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He does. All right, Tamatha. Thanks for your time, man. We'll talk soon, eh?
See you later.
Mate. All the best.
Bye.